I'll be honest with you, sometimes the news has got a rip and tear character. Today's one of those days. Here's what's happened. PlayStation have filed a lawsuit to stop Tencent's next game. They're arguing copyright infringement because, well, of course they are. Just take a look at this. But it's not just, oh, these things look similar. The claim is way deeper. So here's what they claim. The Tencent stole the Horizon gameplay and brand for themselves. Now, if this was just a he said, she said, that would be the end of the story. The difference is that PlayStation have kind of came with receipts. Actual receipts from Tencent's own pitch deck. The very pitch deck where they asked PlayStation if they could make their own Horizon game. With crafting, with pets, with multiplayer. Now PlayStation said no. So what did Tencent do? Well, very much seems like they just decided, screw it, we're gonna make this game and release it. We don't really care about you guys and your IP. Let's be real, IP not really being respected, you know? That neck of the woods. God, I'm so surprised. Okay, listen up if you're due an upgrade. After years of marathon editing, lots of gaming, and just being a silly sausage, I've learned something pretty important, that minor back pain can become pretty major. And it's why I've switched my setup to today's sponsor, FlexiSpot's E7 Pro standing desk. It kind of transformed how I work. So here's what sets them apart, right? While most standing desks wobble around in flimsy aluminium, the E7 Pro uses automotive-grade steel with dual motors and 3-stage semi-C legs, which is a lot of words, but the upshot is it can take 440 pounds of capacity, it doesn't shake about, it actually feels completely solid and stable, it's amazing. Monitors, recording gear, everything, it's rock solid, whether it's at 25 inches sitting or like 50 inches when it's standing. But the real game changer is actually just movement, right? I've preset my perfect sitting and standing heights, and throughout the day, I just cycle between them with one button. I've got a little walking pad as well, and there's a saying. The saying is, the best position is your next position. And what's great about this desk is it makes that effortless and easy. I can't overstate how much of an upgrade it is, and honestly, how much of a goddamn value king FlexiSpot are, because they properly back this up. You get a 15-year warranty in the desk, 30-day risk-free return, so you can basically do it as a trial. And right now, they're running their 9th anniversary sale with up to 65% off. And if you go to flexispot.com and use my code, which is YTE7P50, you'll get an extra $50 off. And to make your upgrade even more complete, if you get the E7 Pro desk, you'll also get a discount on their chairs. And I actually use their C7 chair every single day because it's awesome. That's a hell of a deal for something that's already an amazing value. And it comes to these things that we use every day and spend hours on. Damn, that's where actually making the investment actually pays off. Check them out. And big thanks to them for sponsoring the show. Okay, so remember a while back we had the Insomniac hack. Now what was cool about that is we got data from way more than just Insomniac. One of the things we learned is that Horizon and Forbidden West were PlayStation's 8th and 9th highest selling games by revenue. And here's the scale actually. Horizon is their second best-selling franchise on average, and as of this story, the series has sold more than 38 million units. That's across everything, so the 2 core titles on PC and PlayStation, the remasters, the LEGO spin-off, and even the VR game. Yes, turns out that exists too. And it actually keeps selling. As an example, over the last 2 years, it added 5 million sales. So suffice to say, Horizon kind of matters to Sony, kind of matters big time, especially now that the former boss of Guerrilla, Herman Hulst, runs PlayStation Studios. We've heard a lot of old Herman lately, and I think a lot of people don't know that, well, that's where he comes from. He comes from Guerrilla, from Killzone, from Horizon. Now, according to Jason Schreier on the Spawnwave podcast, here's what's coming, right? Guerrilla Games have been working on a live service co-op Horizon game, basically one that will be channeling Monster Hunter, and it's forecast as their next release. Meanwhile, PlayStation has a deal with NCSoft, and they're allegedly building a Horizon MMO that's all about teaming up and exploring, which might just be why PlayStation took this massive legal step. Indeed, in Sony's own words, they're suing Tencent over what they call, quote, a slavish copy of the series. Their words, not mine. Well, here it is, Light of Mortirum, and it got revealed in November 2024. And when it did, it was kind of, hard to find anyone who didn't agree with the very obvious look. Post-apocalyptic jungles, techno tribes, dinosaur robots, it was 100% ripping off Horizon. And Tencent even copied the marketing, Similar concept art, same positioning for screenshots, the works. Now sure, it is a different game. It's got some new features like base building, like animal capturing and exploiting, as seen in Palworld. And there are some genuinely interesting systems there, I think especially for weather and the dynamic world physics. But at the core, it is Horizon. And analysts like Nico Partners' Daniel Ahmad go a little bit further, because he suggested Tencent was discussing it internally as, quote, Horizon X Palworld, which, well, is fairly obvious. It does appear that's what it is. Now, mentioning Palworld put this lawsuit in a little bit of a sour context. If you remember, say, Nintendo's patent hoarding, their attempts to punish Pocket Pair, and all that stuff. So you may think, is this just PlayStation trying to do the same thing? Are they acting like Nintendo, and the result could be that we just won't have this competition in the market, that we won't get to play this game, or something like that? Is it just punishment for stepping on their toes? Well, as it turns out, everyone, it is not that simple, because, as I said, Sony have got some receipts, rather crucial ones. Turns out the Tencent pitched to make a Horizon game before Light of Mortarium was revealed. That might lead them to the spicy conclusion that their biggest mistake was asking for permission first. Sony Interactive Entertainment's lawsuit demands two things, and they're the usual ones. Number one, stop the release of the game. Number two, pay damages for each infringement. So here's what Sony says happened, right? They say that in March 2024 at GDC, Tencent approached PlayStation's representatives. And when they did, they pitched a collaboration on a Horizon mobile game. It would be made by their Aurora Studios team, and that they'd be the perfect team because they had die-hard fans with platinum trophies in the franchise. That's a quote. Sony published images from the pitch deck, and the title of it is Expanding the Horizon. They literally had Aloy standing on the Great Wall of China. Who knows how she got there, and maybe there's a game in that. Anyway, the pitch was basically Horizon but more, that they would introduce some Eastern aesthetics, they'd add gameplay elements such as survival and crafting, pet taming, multiplayer game modes, etc., which should sound familiar, and certainly will have to Sony, who of course rejected it. And when they did, they said that, quote, given where Guerrilla Games and the Horizon franchise is, they weren't interested. So no crossover, no full game development. Here's the fun bit, here's the spice. Tencent had apparently been working in this game since 2023, without Sony's knowledge. So I just want you to imagine the balls in these people to, in 2023, just develop an overt Horizon ripoff. You know, they basically say as much, right? And to then, after having developed it for a bunch, just say, hey Sony, we want to make this game. Sony's like, no, what the hell? Also, we're kind of making something similar internally anyway. And then for them to just go, all right, cool, we'll change the name and release it anyway. Yeah, that's ballsy, I can at least say that. But let's get back to the story. So our ambitious fellows over at Tencent kept working on the game after the rejection, and then of course they revealed it. When they did, PlayStation weren't thrilled. They fully believe that Light of Mortarium is the game that they were pitched. You can see the visual links, the thematic ones, the design parallels, and here Sony just calls all of it out. And here's a specific example that they flag, that the player character in the Tencent game doesn't have red hair. So the tall grass doesn't need to be red, but it is red. And that may seem a bit weird to you. Like, what are you guys talking about? Why does hair color correlate to grass color? Well, there is a reason why. In Horizon, that is a gameplay conceit to hide Aloy. Basically, her hair and the grass are the same color so that she actually looks like she's hidden. And of course, Sony looks at this and then says, wow, look at that. Tencent replicated this with zero thought put in as to why we made those design decisions. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing. PlayStation does allege more. They claim Tencent, quote, hired a composer from the Horizon Forbidden West soundtrack to replicate the unique sound. Plus, of course, there's all the marketing material. You've got things like a red-headed tribal woman dominating the social media visuals, which, you know, is a little bit familiar. Sony, of course, believes that this directly breaches their Aloy character mark. And, of course, they say it's designed to exploit their popular series. I guess, in a way, it's almost like those mockbuster videos that exist to just confuse grandparents. Just that, of course, it's Tencent. They actually can make fairly sticky games, and they sure as hell know how to monetize them. But for Sony, it's the fact that everyone thought this was a ripoff that's actually core to their case. Things like headlines, Steam comments, video titles, thumbnails, it's all evidence. And it is evidence for a reason, because if the public consensus is that this is a confusing copy, then that is evidence of material harm to Horizon. Their argument then gets stronger with what allegedly happened after the reveal. Sony claims that they had informal discussions with Tencent where they wanted to resolve the IP infringement. Now, for this, because it is kind of high-stakes stuff, we do have to quote the lawsuit directly, and Tencent's response is kind of astonishing. Here it is, quote, Tencent again sought to license the Horizon intellectual property. Sony, again, communicated clearly and unequivocally that it would not license the Horizon assets to Tencent, objected to light of Mortarium, and insisted that it be withdrawn. Tencent has since signaled that it rejected Sony's demands and would forge ahead. So, that's kind of spicy. And again, just to sort of hit the point of holy shit, the balls in these people, can you imagine being caught out at all the different ways that they have, where it's so goddamn obvious, and then whenever the very scary people called Sony come and say, hey, enough of this, cut it out, they're like, did you know, guys, by the way, we could resolve this problem if you just, give us the IP? Holy shit. So with all that, it's fairly obvious why PlayStation filed a lawsuit. To them, it isn't just Tencent copying, it is that Tencent copied after being denied a partnership, that they just decided to take whatever the hell they wanted anyway and forge on ahead, knowing that they were completely ripping off the art style and all those different things, and making a competitor to something that they know Sony is making. Which again, I mean, if anything, kind of ballsy. And here's the rich part of all this. Tencent knows that companies pursue copyright claims. Obviously. And one reason is because Tencent themselves pursue copyright claims. As an example, they won $2.9 million. A lot of money to them, I'm sure. Sarcasm. From Moontoon Technology CEO in 2018. And the reason why is that Mobile Legends infringed on League of Legends. For another example, in 2020, Crisis Action, which is a game from Hero Entertainment, lost to Tencent. It infringed on 6 maps from Tencent's game Crossfire. And just the idea of, hey, that's a map that people like, we'll have it. Fairly common over there. Like, hey, 2-4, DDoS 2? Sweet, I'll just put those in my game. Now, obviously, Tencent does this stuff, so they understand the risk here. If your copycat game is too similar, you will face legal action. But that doesn't stop them from making their own versions of popular games, and it hasn't stopped other people. Now, Pocket Pair's CEO had an interesting take on this, hardly surprising given, everything with Palworld. Basically, when Tencent built their own version, he saw it as a sign of success. His game inspired a bigger, better funded copy. But there is something kind of important here, and that's a little thing called plausible deniability. Daniel Ahmad points out something crucial here, that pitching to use a brand happens all the time. As an example, right? You may not know this, but Mortal Kombat only exists because NetherRealm pitched a Bloodsport game to Jean-Claude Van Damme, which he then rejected. So yeah, if you like Mortal Kombat, you can thank Jean-Claude Van Damme, because he's why they pivoted to making an original property. Similarly, EA outbid Rare on a Tomorrow Never Dies Bond game, and that meant that Rare then pivoted to make Perfect Dark. Now, in both cases, you can see the DNA of what they originally pitched, but, the serial numbers got filed off. There's no accusation of plagiarism. But with this game from Tencent, PlayStation's entire argument is that Tencent didn't file those numbers off well enough. And this is where things get interesting. Something just happened. Tencent have completely changed their marketing materials, and the Game Post spotted this. If you look at the Steam page for the game, you see that the red-headed character is gone, been replaced by these cute little robot animals. Screenshots got swapped to downplay the comparisons, and the game description, well, all the Horizon-adjacent flavor got sanded away. It is all just nuts and bolts talking about mechanics. Not even the theme, not even the setting. Just game mechanics. It's kind of remarkable. Now, the social media pages have not been updated yet, but to be fair, they've also not posted since April anyway. Now, there's no proof that this relates to the lawsuit, but the timing does feel awfully specific, as does a new confirmation from Tencent that the game launches in Q4 2027, which may mean it's less of a threat to PlayStation now. And that brings me to timelines. This case is going to be heard in California, and it will rumble on for a while. The American legal system will determine if Tencent were able to file off enough of the serial number to get away with this. And if a judge prohibits the launch, well, Tencent gets stymied while they get to build their rebuttal. If the game releases, well, we get to see how audiences react to a Horizon game that isn't Horizon. Because that's PlayStation's fundamental problem here. This game will almost certainly launch before the next official Horizon game. And it does seem there's crossover between the features of both of them. So if this is actually a good game and it comes out before, that could drive excitement for the real thing, or it could basically just attack their game before it's even came out. At the very least, it risks making anything that they do just no longer be novel, no longer be interesting to people. As far as I'm concerned, though, it's just one of those things where I think not being derivative is good. Right? I know that's a crazy thing, and I think respecting games as an art form does mean looking at something like this and just finding it to be inherently not respectable. I just don't think it's respectable. I think it's cheap. I think it kind of just says, hey, we actually can't grab the baton and, carry it forward ourselves. All we can do is just a shameless copy of your thing. That's really all we can do. We don't have those creative chops. I just think that's kind of shitty, basically. Let me know what you think, though, and if you do want another little injection of spice into your veins, well, watch this video next.